2024. May the clerk please call roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Gotthelf,
Present.
Councilmember Brendan Elwood,
Present.
Councilmember Mark Jocelyn,
Present.
Councilmember Heather Cullen, Councilmember Christina Rustic,
Present.
Councilmember Susan Torgerson,
Here.
Councilmember Errol Tremolata.
Present.
All are present with the exception of Councilmember Cullen, Your Honor.
And Heather is excused. She did call us to let us know she would not be able to make it tonight.
Thank you. And will the clerk please call, or actually lead us in the flag salute? I should want to do that all over again.
Can you call?
United States.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. This is a very special night, as we all know, across the world and the nation. So thanks for being with us tonight. Let's see, prior to moving on to the consent agenda, I would like to announce that the mayor, council, and administrator concerns and initiatives will take place after tonight's executive session. We will now move on to consent agenda. We have 8 items on our consent agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gotthelf and seconded by Mr. Tremolata. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and is unanimous. Before we move on to citizen comments, as indicated on tonight's agenda, if you are attending remotely and would like to submit public comment, please submit your written comments via in-person drop-off, fax, or email to sopedal@northbendwa.gov by 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. We are no longer taking public comments for those attending remotely via Zoom unless you have reached out to our city clerk in advance of the meeting to request accommodation. We'll now move on to citizen comments. At this time, if you'd like to make a comment to an item that's not on our agenda, we would invite you to come to the podium at this time. You can state your name, your address. You have 3 minutes to speak for the record. And you have requested the accommodation with the clerk and wish to speak during. Oh, okay. We know who you are. So. Oh, I rattled this off.
Oh, hello. I'm Deborah Landers, 14615 438th Avenue Southeast, North Bend. And I think the last time I was here, I talked about the lease of our new site and how excited we are to start developing a makerspace. Well, today I just want to let you know that we're holding our focus groups, our community focus groups next week. And we're really looking for citizen comments, citizen ideas, input on how to best prioritize the development of the new makerspace. Because as board members, we all have our pet projects and our ideas as to how it should be developed. But this really is community space. So we really want the input and information from the community, not only about the types of activities that they like to see there, but also the types of equipment that would be helpful for them in their creative pursuits. So our focus groups are starting next Tuesday evening at Valley Center Stage. And then we go Saturday morning at the Church on the Ridge. And then Sunday evening will be at the Senior Center. So 3 opportunities for people to sign up and join us at a focus group discussion. And I'm here to invite all of you because I'd really love to hear what you would like to see here in North Bend and in the Snoqualmie Valley. But if you're not able to make it, people are busy, we know that, at least go into the sign-up stage. There's a really short survey that starts to get us some information about what the community would like to see. So I'm going to hand these out. And before I do that, do you have any questions? That's all. Oh, was that a raised hand? No, you're timing me. Look at you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone online? 3?
No one at this time.
Thank you very much. We will move on to announcements, presentations, and appointments. Item number 9, introductions tonight. Please, Police Chief Lynch is here to introduce new North Bend city officers. Oh, sorry, Captain. My apologies.
That's okay.
Now that you're forward, you're gonna.
Madam Mayor, council members, city staff, those listening or present today. I'd like to introduce to you the newest officer on our road, Officer Jack Yang. He's in his field training as of last week. So Jack comes to us from South Korea, actually. That's where he was born. He moved here when he was 7 years old. After graduating high school, he joined the Air Force and served from 2017 to 2021. He told me he's found his home here after being employed at the Seattle Police Department and is happy to serve the communities of both Snoqualmie and North Bend and, you know, start building relationships here in the communities. So with that, I'm going to let him have a couple of words. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
Thank you, Captain.
Hello, Officer Yang, just like you mentioned. Pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to start serving the community.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, sir. Any questions from council for Officer Yang? Or comments?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for stepping up. Appreciate it. And look forward to you serving our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Anybody else? Brendan?
Joining our community. It's too far away. I can use my stage voice. Thank you for joining our community. We look forward to working with you and seeing what you do out there. And we have great respect for our police department. So you're joining a good family up there in Snoqualmie Ridge and here in North Bend. So welcome aboard. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
I'll just say ditto to what they said. So being here.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'm excited that you're part of this wonderful tribe of amazing police officers. So thank you for stepping forward, and I hope you have a wonderful experience. So, and I'm going to be right up there in about 2 seconds, right? Yes, I better run, huh? It's always wonderful to welcome a new officer. Okay, item number 10 is a proclamation as Kindness Month. Here we go. Whereas the city of North Bend honors those, no matter how young or old, that make a positive difference in our community and our world. And whereas the Empower Youth Network Youth Suicide Prevention Program, which includes the hashtag Be Kind SB campaign, makes our schools, communities, and states stronger by facilitating meaningful change through simple acts of kindness. And whereas any day, week, or month is a good time to remind all of us of the need to remember the compassion, empathy, humility, and respect are essential ingredients in the creation and maintenance of a kind and civilized society. And whereas kindness is a fundamental part of the human condition, which bridges the divides of race, religion, politics, and gender. And whereas by knowing, understanding, and using our power of kindness, we have the ability to send out a positive ripple that will travel throughout the valley and beyond. And whereas when fostering acts of kindness within our community, we help our citizens develop a thoughtful foundation and perspective within themselves and those around them. And whereas through simple acts of kindness, we can promote healthy behaviors and positive dynamics within our community. And whereas we seek to cultivate caring, kindness, and compassion within our community, now therefore I, Mary Miller, Mayor, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2024 as Kindness Month in the city of North Bend and call upon all citizens to observe this month with the appropriate acts of kindness, caring, and compassion within our community. Yeah.
Hello, and sorry to make you walk over here and then I guess stand for just a moment. Perfect. Yes. Thank you to the North Bend City Council and to Mayor Mary Miller. I'm working on it. Thank you for your leadership and for joining in kindness by proclaiming November as Kindness Month here in the Snoqualmie Valley. Empower Youth Network is hosting a series of activities this November in celebration of Kindness Month, promoting caring, kindness, and compassion within our community. EYN is grateful for the support of the community with this effort, and in addition to the City of North Bend, the following entities and communities traditionally join in together with the proclamation of November as Kindness Month. The Snoqualmie Indian Tribe, the cities of Snoqualmie, Carnation, Duval, the town of Falls City, and the Riverview and Snoqualmie Valley School Districts. We also want to thank the City of North Bend for your ongoing support and funding for our work. Kindness Month activities are all detailed on the Empower Youth Network webpage, but they include the ability to nominate people as kindness ambassadors. Residents are invited to nominate someone in their life, such as a child, teacher, coworker, or community member who spreads kindness to those around them. And then families are invited for a free special showing of Charlotte's Web at the North Bend Theater this Sunday, the 10th. Doors open at 11:30 with popcorn and soda provided. So bring your friends, bring your family. Charlotte's Web is just a classic that, heartwarming story about compassion and acceptance. So we look forward to celebrating kindness in our community with you. Thank you so much for your support. Yes. One more time. Hello, my name is Michelle John, and I'm the grant writer at Empower Youth Network. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to introductions. Item number 11, AB 24-116, ordinance amending NBMC 18.10.030 and 18.10.050 regarding emergency shelters. Ms. Burrell, would you please
Thank you.
provide the staff report? Thank you.
Good evening. The amendments before you tonight are to bring the city into compliance with House Bill 1220. This is a good segue into the next couple of agenda items as well. Per state law, a government shall not adopt, impose, or enforce requirements on affordable housing development that is different than those imposed by other housing developments generally. So we must allow permanent supportive housing and transitional housing as a permitted use in any zone where residential is allowed and where hotels are allowed. Emergency shelters and emergency housing, both temporary in nature, must be allowed where hotels are allowed. The amendments show that those 4 uses would be allowed outright as permitted in the designated zones, and they would not require a conditional use permit. And then we would also remove performance standards related to the housing units and the spacing requirements to be consistent with the other types of housing allowed in those zones. So that's all I have. If you have questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Burrell. Any questions from council for Jamie? Seeing none? Okay, if there are any members of the audience who would like to comment on this agenda item, we would invite you to come forward to the podium at this time. If you have requested accommodation with the city clerk and wish to speak, please raise your hand through the virtual platform and we'll take your comments after in-person comments. Please remember to state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak for the record. Anybody? All quiet? No?
No one online there.
Thank you. Let's see. Councilmember Jocelyn, will you please make the motion?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move approval of AB 24-116, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code sections 18.10.030 and 18.10.050 relating to hotels, emergency shelters, emergency housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing as a first and final reading.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion made by Mr. Jocelyn, second by Mr. Gautel. Mr. Jocelyn, do you have any comments to make for the motion?
I appreciated the readout from Jamie. The important point being that we are sort of held to account, and this is to remain in compliance with state law as we're required to do. And that the nature of, yes, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Jocelyn and Mr. Grottoff, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No, just ditto on what esteemed council members said.
Okay, any additional council comments to make? All right, well, the motion before us is to approve AB 24-116, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code sections 18.10.030 and 18.10.050 relating to hotels, emergency shelters, emergency housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing as a first and final reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, one and all. Item number 12, AB 24-117, resolution authorizing adoption of land use element update for 2024 comprehensive plans. Mr. McCarty.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, you're very welcome.
So staff are very pleased to bring you the land use update to the comprehensive plan. A part of the city's 2024 periodic update, which is a milestone. So this is a product of over a year of collaboration and work with city consultants, with the planning commission, with the council, the general public, the state agencies, tribes, King County, and others to bring you a land use element that is consistent with the requirements of the Growth Management Act. Legislative updates, multi-county planning policies, and county-wide planning policies. This is a lot of work. Specific amendments include new and revised policies, new land use designations, and zoning designations, addressing the city's required housing and employment growth targets, incorporation of a new natural resources section to replace the existing separate natural resources element, which we're proposing to remove from the comp plan, a land acknowledgement and tribal coordination section, and associated minor edits to update outdated information. So there's an attachment to this agenda bill on page 125 of your packet that shows the extensive public outreach, planning commission review, and council review that's gone into this update so far. That's included mailing to all property owners within the city about the comp plan update, a public workshop in January, an information booth at the block party, public hearing before the planning commission in September, and discussion with the council at 3 council work studies. The planning commission provided their recommendation of approval on the amendments on September 18th, following a public hearing at that meeting. You've got a clean version of the draft land use element in your packet on page 129. And there's also a staff report and planning commission recommendations starting on page 187 that includes the red line version showing all track changes and comments about those changes, together with all public comment that's been received in writing to date. City staff recommend approval of this element. The land use element is really the primary element of the comprehensive plan. And this is an integrated component of our overall comprehensive plan update, which is necessary for maintaining eligibility for very important grants from the state and from PSRC and other grant sources. So just for a little bit of background on the importance financially, over just the last 4 years, the city has relied on more than 12 million in state and PSRC managed grants for transportation, infrastructure, and park projects for both capital improvements and maintenance, while utilizing just over 2 million in city funds for these same projects for comparison. Looking forward into the near-term future, the city anticipates an additional 13+ million in grant support for municipal projects on the capital improvement plan. So maintaining this eligibility for these grants with a comp plan that's consistent with the Growth Management Act requirements is critical to the city's budget and its ability to deliver services to our citizens. So the resolution before you authorizes approval of the land use element together with the rest of the 2024 comprehensive plan for adoption via ordinance, which will come back to you on December 3rd. So I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Mr. McCarty, any clarifying questions from council? Mike? No? Okay, thanks, Brendan.
Thank you for the introduction. Would you mind just highlighting the basic or most impactful changes that we're considering here tonight with respect to height and density in certain areas and what certain new zoning recommendations are coming forward?
Yeah. So the council has got the zoning map on your desk there. Some of the key things are, first of all, the blue, you see the neighborhood mixed use zone. That is essentially just a revision of the name of the neighborhood business zone that we currently have. But we are proposing to rezone about 51 properties that are currently in Employment Park 1 to that neighborhood mixed use. And what that does, it allows more kind of retail, a little bit higher value uses in those areas. But what it also more importantly does is it also allows second floor and above residential in a mixed use context. And that's very important for us to be able to meet our residential growth targets. So we've got the growth targets established by Puget Sound Regional Council. And this year, those growth targets are not just a flat target of meeting a certain number of housing units, but it's been broken down by affordability level. And the city's primary need for affordability is in the lower end of affordability, below 80% AMI. And that really means multifamily housing. And so this particular amendment to the neighborhood mixed use allows us to accommodate additional, or to accommodate the growth target with multifamily type uses.
And so for that one, it's 51 units. I didn't quite hear.
The number of units within
Yeah,
each.
that we're going to gain for
Oh,
the target.
I would have to dig into the
Okay.
land capacity analysis.
Okay, well, that's
To
okay.
that level.
We'll just go
detail.
through the different proposed amendments on the map first. Thank you.
Yeah.
Point of clarification on that. So the section on where there's the Tanner Junction Master Planning Overlay, can you just, for a point of clarification, can you explain what that overlay does?
So that overlay is we have several overlays within the city. And we have overlay regulations. And the purpose of those overlay regulations is when you have a large property that will probably see a lot of different types of use within it. The master plan overlay is a way to establish some parameters about planning for transportation, planning for adjacencies, access, and mix of uses. It provides also additional opportunity for flexibility to a property owner to propose certain things, certain uses that are not allowed by the underlying zone. And that process goes through the public to ultimately come up to the city council for approval, just as would a zoning amendment.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions?
Well,
Oh,
he's still.
Oh.
sorry.
Yeah, I can continue
you.
on with the other
Please.
changes.
Thank you.
So another primary change is within our interchange commercial zone, basically at the outlet mall. We are proposing to allow second floor and above residential. So that's not currently allowed, and that additionally helps us with that residential development capacity to meet our growth target with multifamily type housing.
And within that zone, it's my understanding that, please keep me honest, 5 feet could equal 136 units.
That's a different one.
Okay,
So that is within the adjacent interchange mixed use zone.
okay.
And that's where currently there's a 30-foot height limit. And this is with the zoning amendments or the code amendments that will accompany the comp plan, which will be coming to you on
In
December
December.
3rd.
And that's
And
when
so-
we'll be looking at some of those adjustments on heights and what we get in trade-off for those heights.
Correct. Yeah, so that would go from a 30-foot height limit, which is 5 feet lower than the rest of most of the city for some odd reason, up to 35 feet. And that enables you to do typical multifamily type buildings or townhome. type
And that
buildings.
same type of code amendment could be applied to the outlet mall as well.
Height increase?
Yeah, if we were to do, what is our outlet mall? Interchange commercial. There's no residential there currently allowed.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
But that could be a potential zoning change, which is to upzone or change that zone to the outlet mall to allow for residential development, in which case we could increase heights in that area to accommodate higher density residential in the outlet mall area, should a developer ever want to make those type of improvements on that property, correct?
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
And
so
then-
that,
Oh, go ahead.
that is the allowance for multifamily is a part of the plan to meet the growth targets. But I think you're talking about going beyond the 35 feet
Correct.
to accommodate additional, which would also be possible.
Within that area. And if we were to go 5 feet extra there, what sort of calculations do we have on how many units that could accommodate?
Yeah. 134,
So-
okay.
One thirty-four for
Page 176 of your packet provides the housing capacity per zone that we're adding by making these changes. So you were right, the IMU gives you 136 units, the interchange commercial 134.
Okay, so we're maybe about a little bit more than a third of the way for the 611 units that we're required to accommodate for by the Growth Management Act, correct? And just by adding 5 feet to each of those zones. Adding another 5 feet could double that, correct?
We'd have to run the numbers.
Sure. And I also understand we can't, select one area of the city where we would target for all the affordable housing that we're trying to achieve through growth management targets. But could we split that up between different areas, such as what we have at the outlet mall, the interchange there, and perhaps even down modifying the IC down at Trucktown area?
That is a possibility at council's direction.
And those particular possibilities aren't really accounted for in what we're approving tonight, correct?
No.
But that is, at what point in time could those considerations be made as potential recommendations for different zoning than what we're looking at tonight?
So right now, we're looking to try to meet the target of a comp plan update by the end of the year, which is our legislative mandate.
Mm-hmm.
So the council beyond that could look at additional amendments to meet that target, to be able to revise the zoning as you wish. That would be the city's 2025 comp plan update.
Mm-hmm. But in doing that, we would have the new zoning that we're adopting tonight, and then on top of that, additional zoning for more high density residential, as opposed to taking a look at those particular areas and adding those in now, maybe as a trade-off for some of the other neighborhoods that we're going to walk through in just a second.
Well, the council can give us direction for whatever, but I think our concern is to be able to meet our legislative update
Deadline
before the end of the year.
No, I understand that. I'm just bringing out the different considerations that have been brought up in the past, some things that we're talking about here, because we're going to be adopting some pretty substantial zoning changes here that really there's no guarantee that will meet the affordable housing needs. We're just identifying the potential. But we all know that when we've done this in the past without subsidies or without putting certain ordinances or restrictions on the land itself, they go for market rate. So we're creating a plan for something that theoretically will not be able to achieve.
Our
There's no
requirement
guarantee
is
that
to
we could
plan
achieve.
for and accommodate. We're not required to show that that actually gets built.
Right.
That's-
So the plan is just something that we can come up as a creative body based on all the hard work that's been put forward on this. It doesn't necessarily have to be the particular suggestions that are in the packet tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Would you mind going through the other changes in the community?
Yeah, so also the downtown commercial zone, the red,
Mm-hmm.
is being expanded. So basically the current limit of that is just a little bit past the roundabout at Cedar Falls Way to Torgerson Park. Everything east of there and south of North Bend Way, and that little bit of an island of red, that is currently low density residential and is being changed to downtown commercial. So
Mhm.
that also enables us to meet additional residential growth.
And in that island between North Bend Way and Cedar Falls Way, I think previous councils, just for historical context, weren't interested in changing that zoning in the past. Is that correct?
Well, we've had comments both ways.
I'm sorry?
We've had people speak in support and against those amendments.
But I remember some zoning changes coming through to council that council did not support in that particular area. Is that correct? Historically,
Many years ago, yeah.
I thought it was on the last council.
Okay.
There was some development. And just the piece across from Torgerson Park and the island between North Bend Way. And right now there's some large properties with houses there. And I think there was requests to come in to change those to commercial in the previous council, and council did not support that. That's my recollection, but I'm hoping somebody will fact check me on that.
If I recall, when it came before us, it was actually wanting to change it into a venue for weddings and stuff like that, if I recall. Was that the one you were thinking of?
That was further down. That was the Moon Valley
Okay,
opportunity. That was more across the street from the Todd's Towing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
I do recall some of others that didn't want to do that. And my concern is we're talking about this, since I hijacked your conversation, is doing something that's going to increase density and increase a lot more home, which is what most of our constituents are against. We're not guaranteed in any of this to get what we need,
Exactly.
but could be increasing the population substantially by what we're allowing.
Correct. That's my assessment. Okay, so we've done now you've talked through the downtown commercial, so increasing density on that little island, if you will, on I guess it would be the east side of the roundabout there. So let's go to the next one. So that's 3, or is that 4?
So with the zoning amendments or the code amendments associated, that would be the 4. There's other docket related amendments that have been brought through that aren't related to meeting targets. I can go through those as well if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. So there's a revision based on a docket from Craig Glazier for his property that is just east of Safeway. And you can see that in the pink there. That's proposed to change from low density residential to high density residential.
And they're out of city limits though.
That's currently outside city limits, so that's pre-annexation zoning, and that would need to be annexed for that zoning to be effective.
And so the consideration on the pre-annexation conversation is just that parcel, not that whole area over there?
That's just the zone. And so the annexation would need to consider, what it makes sense for.
Well, the reason why I ask is because it's always puzzled me that there's this little desert between our city limit on this side of the river, and then you hit Safeway, and there's a bunch of property that's right there that's King County, unincorporated King County, that is highly developable and very good target for high density residential, and its close proximity to the downtown core, its walkability to Safeway and some other services. And so is the annexation consideration just for that Craig Glazier lot, or is it all of the homes in that stretch?
That would be up to council with an annexation proposal.
So an annexation proposal for that could lend us some credit to the affordable housing capacity that we're trying to achieve, correct?
If that were currently annexed, it's not, so we can't count that.
Just
But
a
we-
point of information.
Yes.
I just want to be real clear that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no proposal here that's being brought forward that says the city is seeking to annex that parcel. That's a landowner's docket request that's reflected here.
Correct.
Thank you.
To clarify as well, that's not calculated in the GMA numbers.
That's right. That's it. That piece of land is a part of King County's growth target.
And my point in bringing it up is that if we were to consider annexation of that particular area between the South Fork, yep, we would then add it to our numbers, which could be part of the strategy to meeting our capacity. But we're not considering that tonight. That's just an individual docket, right? So this is yet another tool in our strategic toolbox to meet capacity demands, right? Okay, thank you. Would you please continue?
Sure. So if you look at the very northwest corner of this zoning map, you'll see a big yellow property. That is currently zoned Employment Park 1, and that is subject to a docket that was requested by that property owner to rezone that to low density residential, reflecting the topography on the site. It's very sloped with critical areas, so it's not well suited to the kind of larger scale light industrial type of uses that would be within the neighborhood or within the employment park zone.
And I think historically, at least as long as I've been on council and even council before me, that area has historically not been wanting to be rezoned. Is that correct? In keeping it at the EP, correct? All right, let's go on to the next one.
Okay. Next one would be, there are several properties that have been rezoned on here from various zones to parks, open space, and public facilities. So that reflects acquisitions by the city of those properties over time. So like, as an example, Tenant Trailhead Park. There's also a number of critical area tracks and park tracks within subdivisions that are have been rezone from their underlying zone, typically low density residential, to that POSPF zone, recognizing their protected status.
Say that last part again, I'm sorry.
So little park tracts and critical area tracts, as
Mhm.
subdivisions occur over time, and they dedicate those tracts for various kind of open space purposes, that zoning is reflecting that status.
Okay, so they'll continue to stay open space.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I believe that is it. Or is that- Oh, yeah, there's some just name changes as well. We've got our Employment Park 1 zone, which is going to change into Business Park. And we have our Employment Park 2 zone, the dark gray, which is going to change to Employment Park. And
And
that's
it-
just some simplification within our,
But there's nothing changing within the land use. It's just a
no,
name change, correct?
no.
Okay. So I guess where I'm at is that, as I've expressed before in the past, is that it feels to me like there's some other creative, I guess, considerations that we can apply to this to meet the criteria. That doesn't necessarily mean increasing density in the downtown area and in adding to a high density sprawl, if you will, within the core area, and keeping some of the other zoning the way it is, just because we need some of that space, and there's good debate and good content as to why previous councils have decided to do what they have done. Would that be a fair assessment that there's more that we can do on this map?
There are a lot of options that the council could consider. So
Great.
the planning commission considered several options and provided direction and recommendation on what you have before you. So council can take that and consider other options as well. I think the thing that we're hoping from staff perspective to do is just to meet our December 31st deadline with a comp plan that's consistent with GMA.
Right. And so, from a council standpoint, we're up against the deadline. We're given these zoning options at 0 hour, without us being able to really weigh in enough and affect change. Even at our work study, I think I had mentioned some of these things. So I'm just putting it up to my colleagues here that if we adopt this, it is going to be what it is, and we're going to have to live with that. I don't know what the threat of the deadline is, other than we just didn't meet it. I don't know if we're going to be out $13 million in the month of January. I don't think so. Maybe you could expand a little bit on what it means if we need to reconsider some of the zoning options on here and we don't make that December 31st deadline.
The council certainly has the opportunity to go back and revise this in a comp plan update next year. We're just limited to updating our comp plan once a year. But the council could certainly shift around where those targets are met, to be able to revise zones and height limits and so forth.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just wondering if we choose not to adopt the land use element, this plan tonight, and we don't make, let's say, the December 31st deadline, what happens then?
Well, that's ultimately up to the grant provider. So PSRC, we're required to meet our targets. We rely on a lot of PSRC grants. And when you apply for that, one of the things they're looking at is, do you have a comp plan that's recognized as current by Department of Commerce?
So we could adopt it in January and be probably just fine.
Well, potentially,
We don't know
yes.
what they're going to do. Right? So that's
Through the chair, I would say that I'd be very cautious right here, because as you know, we've been looking at our capital improvement plan lately, and we rely very, very heavily on grants. And if you go through this kind of a planning process, there is a protocol that you follow. You do have a planning commission. You do have public outreach, which we went through. You have a planning process that you should follow to touch base with people in the community. And as you know, the Growth Management Act is a very strong piece of legislation that influences every comprehensive plan in every community in the state. And it is very top down in some respects. So I believe that a thoughtful process where you go through the docket process and you go through a public participation process and your planning commission, your other commissions where it relates to economic development or parks, is the proper way to go through this consideration. And that's precisely what we did to get to this point. So if you're asking, what does it mean? It could stop some capital improvement projects now that we are in design for and looking for additional monies to build. And it would influence a lot of costs on the staff level to go back and go through this. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it. We do dockets every year. But I think if you do this more thoughtfully, you could go back and change some of the zoning that we're changing now if you wish to. But at this point, it's kind of the 11th hour, and to act as though we haven't given opportunity to explore other options or to look at those, we have. And the planning commission has looked at many options. And as a matter of fact, many of the changes that it seems that you're not happy with are a response to property owner requests for rezoning. So we have to respect the property owners and the work that they've done in their neighborhoods to get support too. So I think with an appropriate process, you can probably get to where you'd like to go. But I think to do it at this point endangers a lot of our capital improvement funding. And it basically says the process that we spent a lot of time and effort on was fruitless.
I don't agree with that at all.
I'd like to make some say, I am not going to support this tonight. I have a concern with this and the way we've gone about this. I understand your statement about property owners and docket stuff being done, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's an outreach. There's a lot of things in here that I know in the past that our citizens have not wanted. This, the way it sits, will increase in areas that we never designed to increase, and it's going to create sprawl. I don't want to not see it get done. I would rather see us quickly do something to make some changes to this where it's reasonable. But at this point, this is, again, the process we went through. You might say it's a public process, but I would tell you the majority of the people out there don't know about it, don't know about the docket changes and the changes that the individual property owners wanted. And I'd like to see some of that be discussed a little bit more. But at this point, this is totally against increasing, which is one of the things when we all ran that our citizens didn't want to see increased density, increased, population. And every addition of homes is a cost to us. And right now we're in a situation where we can't barely afford what we've got. And adding more costs is not something that I think is prudent for this council. And I appreciate the planning commission's input, but at the end of the day, it falls on us to make a commitment to our citizens and vote the way it should be based upon our feelings.
Just a point of clarification, Your Honor.
Claire.
I think that we're at the point of clarifying questions before we go to comment from the public, before the motion comes before us, such that we as a council usually would then engage in conversation about support or lack thereof. I think we get to circle back to clarifying questions. Unless I'm wrong.
I totally agree. Thank you very much. Any other clarifying questions, Tempe? Okay. No worries.
Sorry, you commented about a request from homeowners to rezone a space. And the question was, there had previously been objection to rezoning space. So my question is, did homeowners that are being impacted by this, they had an opportunity to comment, were there objections to some of these plans, some of the plan?
Thinking back, that I don't know that there is written comment, but I recall one person objecting on the change from low density residential to downtown commercial, but there was also multiple people that supported that as property owners.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Anybody else? Ren, I'll hit you up in a second. Anyone else who hasn't spoken? No. Okay.
I just want to clarify my last comment. I agreed with everything that you said about following the process and the significance of it. What I don't agree with is that if we don't support it, it means it's a message that this was a fruitless exercise. I don't agree with that. Part of my contention is that it is, as you say, the 11th hour, right? We're having to decide this. We were presented it at our work study last week. These are the recommendations we're moving for. I know I had expressed some concerns at the work study, similar concerns that I had pressed in previous work studies in previous years. So it's not a net new thing, at least for me. But I do respect the process and I do respect the amount of work that's gone into this. So I just wanted to clarify my last comment.
Thanks, Brendan.
I did have a question. Mr. McCarty, if you could just clarify the difference between the Employment Park 1 and neighborhood mixed use. There are some proposed rezones, if I'm right, from EP1 to MMU.
Correct.
Can you just
So-
speak to the
Employment Park 1 is a light industrial zone that allows a little bit more heavy kind of resource and warehouse type of uses. Neighborhood mixed use allows more retail, a little higher value uses, and allows second floor residential. With the proposed code amendments that are going to be coming to you on December 3rd, that also includes a footnote that preserves the opportunity to do some of the warehousing and some of the larger uses on larger properties, reflecting that that is a potentially impactful change to those properties. So that footnote is the intention to preserve some of that opportunity based on comment that we did receive from property owners.
Okay, I think we've covered everything, hopefully. If any members of the audience would like to comment on this agenda item, we would invite you to come forward to the podium at this time. If you have requested accommodation of the city clerk, you wish to speak, please raise your hand through the virtual platform. We will take your comments after any person comments. Please state your name, your address, and if you're missed to speak. Anybody? No. I see Lise Cherie online.
Yes, we have one commenter. That would be
Okay.
Cherie Cooper.
Cherie, you're on and welcome. Cherie? Wait. Is she? There she goes.
Okay,
Okay,
I
welcome.
apologize. I have to wait to be unmuted. All right, Cherie Cooper, 301 North Tacoma Avenue, Tacoma, Washington, 98403. Good evening, everyone, council, Mayor Miller, and staff. I feel a little tepid about weighing in on this, considering, but here's the thing. I think all of you know about the 28.82 acres, the 8 parcels. That is EP1 that is being presented as being rezoned to MNU. And to Councilman Tremolata's point about the Tanner Junction overlay, which has me believing that you saw the memo I sent in earlier, there's a little more to it. Tanner Junction overlay was originally HDR EP1, much like where Dahlgren had its zoning and where Traverse is now. We had HDR removed by the council in 2016, so we're back to EP1. But there is some language in that junction overlay that says we need to now be transitional between everything that built around us. I've also indicated we have some developers, very good developers, and I've been thinking about all the fiscal talk at the council work studies and what can happen for the city for some of what's in the future. None of it's residential for us anymore. And with all due respect, I've talked to staff about this. Mike McCarty, Jamie, and James Henderson, as recently as after your last council work study. They know my concerns. I understand when the staff says that's not to be concerned with, Cherie, even if you're rezoned MNU, a master plan overlay will kind of supersede that. I can only tell you what our developers are telling us. There is enough that we have to whittle away at, them with you, with a master plan and some of the other things that have come along, like North Bend Street corridors, and big asks for these developers. And I understand developers pay for a lot of your infrastructure. I'm trying to build the bridge that we get to your economic development upswing. And it's not just East North Bend and West North Bend, but we've been here for 10 years. I've been trying to work at getting us noticed and not having too many things tweaked in the wrong direction that the marketplace doesn't welcome us. And we can't bring you something for the city, and that includes all of your residents. Thank you.
Cherie, anybody else online? I don't see anybody. No? No. Thank you very much. Councilmember Jocelyn, will you please make the motion? Sorry about that.
No, I saw it coming. Just
Okay.
my computer went to sleep, not me. Here we go.
That's what happened.
I move approval of AB 24-117, a resolution authorizing adoption of the land use element for the 2024 North Bend Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, sir. And may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tremolata. Motion made by Mr. Jocelyn and seconded by Mr. Tremolata. Mr. Jocelyn, would you like to add anything more to your motion?
Yeah, this is absolutely not inconsequential. And that's not lost on me. I don't think it's lost on members of this council. It's been acknowledged by everyone here that the staff has put in incredible amount of time, effort, as has Planning Commission and others. We are able to, isn't cast in stone forever. I see it more as an ongoing conversation. I think part of it, but I will be voting in favor of this tonight. The number I heard that sticks with me is that, $12 million versus $2 million of city investment. That's a 1 to 6 return on investment. And in these times, that's just absolutely critical. And while I don't disagree, the conversation needs to continue to move forward. I'm supportive of what's been brought to us tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Jocelyn, Mr. Tremolata. Look to add anything.
Sure. Well, I worked on this with Planning Commission when I was sitting on Planning Commission, so I know this well. I don't agree with some of the comments tonight based on being a resident of the East Side and trying to bring my neighborhood the needs and wants that it believes is lacking. There's 3 other members of Planning Commission that live in 2 neighborhoods around me, so they share some of the interest of the neighborhood mixed use area near Tanner. I think, well, let me step back. I think there's plenty of ways to skin this cat. I think is very obvious and clear. I don't necessarily disagree with some of the comments of the other tools in the tool belt that we can have. I'm open to having those conversations. With that said, the demand for retail on the East Side is incredibly high. It's been high when I showed up. Every year there's after, it's been very high. Expanding the downtown to create more opportunities towards the east end of town is critically important to my neighborhood, the neighborhood behind me, and the neighborhood adjacent to me, for all the families that are growing here in the community and don't have the same amenities on that end of town. So I don't see anything objectionable on this. I am very open to continuing the conversation. I think, as Councilman Jocelyn said, if we want to make a change in 25, if there's a better maneuver for the plan, I'll be all ears and willing to participate in that conversation. But for the sake of moving the ball forward, securing our capital improvement dollars and not putting those at risk, as well as delivering what my neighborhood is telling me we want, and I should say my area of town, I'm going to vote in favor of this, and I support it.
Thanks, Errol. And any other council members wishing to make a comment? Susan?
I'm going to abstain from voting from this as I have property in some of the locations that's being changed in zoning.
Any other council members?
Well, if I may, I'd like a point of clarification from the attorney then as to how a abstention is recorded if council votes. When council votes. And it's not personal. I think it would be benefit. I think it may be recorded in the affirmative. I'm not sure.
Normally an abstention without good reason is recorded with the majority, but because the council member has reason for the abstention, it cannot be recorded with the majority. So if there is a vote, the council member's abstention will not be recorded on the majority side because of a potential conflict. It's an abstention. It will be recorded as an abstention.
And so the distinction between abstention and recusal is?
Abstention is for essentially good cause, so that there might be an ability to avoid a potential conflict.
I just was thinking recusal for some reason, but.
The council rules do articulate it at abstention.
Thank you.
Okay, any other council? Did you say one?
I think.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
So, and I appreciate this, and I agree that there are some elements in here that definitely we should consider. And I understand the point that we adopt it now and then we can change it next year. The challenge that I have with that is adopting now and getting it on the books to change it next year will allow time for the new land use elements to be modified, or developers to come in and make changes to it. So I'm concerned about the timing of that when they start putting in permitting for and plans to do something that we may not want to have to go in certain areas. That's my concern for doing the quick adoption or for doing it following this plan. I also understand that we do have some work studies available before the end of this year. And I know we have December 3rd council meeting, which will probably be stacked agenda, but we've also had special council meetings in the past. So if it's really imperative that we meet this December 31st deadline, and understand that there could be a threat to some grant funding, but understanding grant funding and that type of thing, that may not happen right away, then it might be in our best interest to try to get this on sooner before December 31st. Let us knock it around a little bit in another work study, bring it back to an agenda and bring it back to another council meeting before the end of the year. I think that's a viable option.
I'm hearing you, Brendan. We are running out of time for our council meetings. We're down to 3, I think. Is that the number I'm coming up with? So our last one council meeting is December
3rd,
excuse me. And we were talking about a work study cancellation in that December month. Typically, we don't have more council meetings in that month, so we can talk.
Don't we have a work study?
We have.
Mike, if we were not to adopt it, would it go back to planning commission in any way? I mean, they put in a significant amount of work. Or would we just have a work study and say, we don't need the planning commission, we'll figure this out ourselves?
Their recommendation to you, and so it's your discretion at this point to take the planning commission's recommendation or to make modifications.
Yeah, as I said, I have some concerns. I think that the targets we're hitting are going to overextend it. I had some concerns on areas where we're actually taking something and creating single family residence additional as opposed to the more dense, which is what we're requiring. And like I said, at this point, I can't see myself voting in favor of this tonight.
Point of information. I don't know what point this one is. What is our exact calendar schedule leading to December 3rd, assuming that the plan will be not to have any meetings beyond December 3rd? I thought we had another work study option in the month of November. And my point in bringing this up is that if we have a work study or if we have a special work study, which we are entitled to do, we would hopefully get to some level of agreement and consensus that this can be on the following agenda. It won't go through this debate back and forth. I'll certainly I'll withhold a lot of my commentary, knowing that we've knocked it around and we've had a chance as a council to actually process it, as opposed to here's 30 minutes on a work study, here's what we're going to do, and now it's showing up on your council meeting to approve. I would just like a little bit more time with it.
I'm hearing you, Brandon. So you're good there. So I'm gonna look towards city clerk, Susie, as far as our dates next to for November. We've got, I can't remember the dates offhand for the work study. 12th, 19th, 26th. Yeah. Right.
When you do a work study before the next council meeting? Have we done that?
Well, we could also, yeah, we can schedule a different.
A few points of clarification, just for the calendar's sake. There's a number of things that we need to evaluate with this. So we need to look to run the numbers based on your direction to make sure that we're still meeting our capacity with the residential growth targets. We also have SEPA that was based on a specific land use proposal for the land use element. We need to make sure that SEPA can accommodate whatever changes that you're proposing to do without having to go back and reissue SEPA. So there could be additional time-consuming process in addition to just considering simple changes within the land use element.
Everybody understand that?
I think that's why I'm saying, let's have a work study at the next council meeting. Start at 6 o'clock. This is the only thing that would be on it that would be discussed. Because I think the majority of this is, I mean, I agree, you've done a good job. I have just some concerns that are around the edges that increase, more than I think the citizens really want us to do.
And I don't want to sound selfish, but some people may be out of town traveling. So I don't want to, I mean, we've tried to coordinate calendars before, and I hear your point, Mike, on that. but I think we could come up with a special study date. I just don't know what those would be.
So you're saying you won't be here at the next,
Next week, I'm out of town.
when is the next council after that?
I leave the 12th and return the 15th.
What about the 19th?
19th, I'm here.
We do have a standing meeting on the 19th.
Yeah, and what Councilmember Gothelf is
what
saying is we have a work study before the meeting.
We have done in the past, we've done a work study before, start at 6 o'clock, have our meeting at 7. So I'm saying before the council meeting, we have a work study.
But the mechanics of this, if you listen to Mike, right, from a land use perspective, we have that meeting. There are some changes that come out of that meeting, and that somehow, some way, we're supposed to get SEPA considerations or any other land use done during the week of Thanksgiving prior to the final vote in the year, December. It's not feasible. It's not realistic.
It may
And
not
all
be,
of
but
the SEPA in particular requires public notification and issuance and publishing in the paper, and all of that requires.
but it could also be in the first meeting of the new year, even though we don't meet the deadline. I don't know what 5 days after the deadline will mean to PSRC. I just can't imagine there's a threat of $12 million because we were working on a plan and then we finalized the plan so close to that, whatever that deadline is. Otherwise, I think it might just not pass, which I don't think we want that to happen.
The $12 million bet.
Yeah, you're playing a little bit of a gambling game there, because I can't speak to what those agencies or what Commerce is going to say, but we are required to provide Commerce with our updates by the end of the year. And I don't know all the ramifications for if that doesn't happen.
So part of our process should have probably had this coming to us middle of the year, even though I know that wasn't feasible, right? I mean, that as a person here that has to make the decision, I'm being asked to finalize this decision so close to a deadline with a pressure that forces me to go against what I think the people really want us to do. So that's the kind of pressure that I'm trying to work through here, Mike, because I appreciate the deadline and I appreciate the $1 million gamble that you're speaking of. But honestly, to Councilmember Gothel's point, you know, campaigning this last year, I heard a lot of voices, and a lot of voices came through loud that some of the things that we're approving here goes counter to what they want. And I don't think they understand why we're having to do this. So if we can come up with some reasonable trade-offs in certain areas, then maybe it would be a better decision, as opposed to just adopting and hoping for the best that developers just won't come in and start processing and doing all the things they need to get things in motion before we are able to revisit it.
We can revisit it right away. We can pick it up in January. That's our purview.
You certainly can.
We don't have to wait, but we can at least adopt, protect the funding, and continue the conversation in January. That's what I'm willing. I'm not opposed to what you're saying, but that is a very risky maneuver when we just approved a capital improvement plan that was extensive. And I agree with you that folks have been vocal about it, but not about the comprehensive plan. They're vocal about the growth management.
Right.
Which we have no control over.
The Department of Commerce.
We have to comply.
The
We have
Department of Com-
control over specific areas we're talking about.
Right, but if you go back to the voters and say, are you willing to take a $12 million bet on that? That's the conversation we should be having.
And
We don't have the time.
I think there are homeowners or other residents who would be upset if we didn't go through. And I'm not saying, we can take a look at what SEPA is going to be. But at this point, it's either right now, the way I look at it, it's not going to pass, or we come up with a solution to work quickly to try to get something moving.
That's not feasible. And to assume that the public has not been notified means that no one here has been following the process since the beginning of the year. The planning commission notices have gone out, the public comment has gone out. We may not have participated in it, but the public did. It's our job to protect the funding for this town. If we're $12 million short, I'm not willing to risk that.
Certainly can.
Clarifying question, if we were to pick it up in January, what is the earliest that we could make adjustments and get them approved? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months?
Yeah, I think a few months from the time of when you pick it up, just with the amount of process to bring things through the planning commission, notify SEPA, et cetera.
Okay, so several months.
Yeah, potentially 3 months.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
I don't mean to be a housekeeper, and it's hard to be in conversation with public officials, but there's a reason these meetings are run the way that they're intended to be, which is everybody speaks before anybody else gets another turn, and we should be acknowledging how each other as council member if we want to get into practice about it. It's hard. I wanted to comment on the motion before us and just acknowledge one last time that the document we've been brought is an incredible balancing act already between a multitude of interests, including a number of people who own parcels who have brought dockets to the city and are asking for these requests. So while there might be members of the, and I'm sure that there are, depending on who you ask, they'd be all over the map. You could build a case of support or lack of support or challenge or not challenge for any aspect of this plan as a whole or any piece within it, I would argue. But it's come here through a process. I mean, Errol has put in who knows how many hours, and I just, along with many other people, to get to this, not to mention staff, in response to many, many requests, interests. It's a balance. What I'm hearing is that we have opportunities and a conversation and a living document. So we're not casting it in stone, but we are, and to me, recognizing the work that's been done to get us to this point, not putting at risk $12 million, you know, in the capital improvement funds for the city, and moving forward, perhaps more able and more anxious to be in conversation about exactly these things. So again, I will reiterate that I intend to vote in support tonight. Thank you.
How many grants are outstanding right now that could be impacted by this decision?
Mark, I'd have to defer to you. I think most of them are public works related.
Yeah, I didn't come with that information tonight, but we have a bunch of grant applications we plan to submit at the start of next year in 2025 through Puget Sound Regional Council, through Washington State Transportation Improvement Board, and for the Rural Cities Program that the state also administers. So I don't know the exact application dates, but part of the eligibility criteria is having an approved 6-year transportation improvement plan, which we do have, and which we've done every year, and also having an up-to-date comp plan. There's a few other criteria on some of these grants, but I don't know the exact dates, if it's March 15th or March 29th, or one of my staff does, but I don't have that information here.
Thank you for that. I mean, my question in that is that we're gambling, to my colleague's potential point, but we're also thinking that we're going to lose $12 million if we don't settle this in January. So I'm curious, you know, when those grant monies are at risk, and if it's going to take several months, 3 months to go through SEPA projects, if we pass it tonight, it's going to be into Q2 before we're able to really know if we should change the land use anyway. So the risk is there that developers could take advantage of something that we may not want to have happen in certain areas of adopting this. So that's the trade-off here. If the grant monies that we're going to be applying for in March and sometime thereafter into the new year, it seems logical to me that if we have this plan adopted by January, we would have the plan adopted. But I think we can adopt it this month, but I don't know the SEPA process. If it's just 1 or 2 areas that we're worried about and not the entire thing, does that minimize the amount of time that we would have to apply on this? So for example, if we said this area we're not comfortable with, but maybe this area we could do something in 1-for-1 kind of trade-off, does that minimize the amount of scope and the time and the investment to make that change?
That may be possible. We'll just have to wait to get direction from you and then look at what the SEPA determination has provided.
Okay. So it's plausible that we could have a meeting.
I think a reasonable strategy would be to move forward with the adoption to protect our funding. We control our work study schedule, right? This is through Pro Tem. If it's become such a high priority for council, we should have had work studies throughout the year. We didn't. No harm, no foul. Don't know why it was, if it was such a high, important item. but go into 2025, make it a priority on our work studies. We can make the amendment in a timely manner if council so agrees on some change to the current plan. But I don't think we should be risking significant dollars for our town, which would have serious impacts as we're trying to grow revenue streams, while we're also adopting significant impact to our public safety dollar. We're not going to have money to pull from all these other things to fill the gap. So we're going to miss on funding. We don't know to what degree. Maybe it's $1 million. Maybe it's 12 million. We don't know. But without that information, I think it's irresponsible for us to not adopt what the planning commission has recommended.
The only thing I'm going to say is the stuff he's talking about hasn't even been presented. We haven't. So it's not 12 million we have that we're losing in the bank. And even if we submit the 12 million, we're not guaranteed the 12 million. At this point, the way I look at it, it's either we do something to get the council and get majority of the council moving forward, or it just fails tonight. So I'd prefer us to come up with some work study that works with us. If we have to do another work study, unfortunately, this is how it came to us. If we would have known this before, it would have been different. It's hard when it comes to the end of the year. So my opinion is let's find a place where we can sit down, talk about it as a whole group and come up with something to get to a yes, as opposed to where we're at right now.
The conversation I'm hearing is that either we approve this and move forward to be in conversation about how to fix it, or we don't approve it, taxing staff over the holidays in hopes of coming up with something, though, at some point we would then as a group be willing to approve, such that I betcha we could continue to still be in conversation about it. I would rather pass it and be in conversation than not pass it and be in conversation for the reasons that I think have been made clear.
My suggestion would be to go back and reconsider the November 19th, where we meet. We have the work study before that meeting. Question for Kendra. Is this hypothetical? Let's say we have this work study on the 19th. We feel very excited about where the element is. My assumption is most of these items will go through. And then we say, okay, we want to modify this land use. Can we adopt the land use without the SEPA studies being done, and in such a way that we're adopting it, provided, we get all the studies back that they're supportive of the direction that we want to go? So we have officially adopted a plan. We're just doing some extra work to validate those decisions.
Councilmember, I understand your question to essentially be proposing an adoption subject to SEPA. That is not the traditional process. I am not the city's SEPA official, so I can't speak to it. I'm happy to research and give you an answer at a later time.
Okay, because that could be something we could discuss on the 19th. And we could, instead of voting up or down on this tonight, we vote to move to a date certain, which would be the 19th.
But to be clear, we cannot vote at work study, right? So
no, the work study is before the council.
Right, but your comment on we somehow come to an agreement with a change of land use within work study is not even accurate, because we can't cast a vote. We're taking a temperature of the room, which then has to be analyzed by staff, but then represented to council, which then could be voted down anyway.
What I'm saying is the direction that we want to go, we would then adopt that change. We would amend the proposal in the actual council meeting with the provision. So we're adopting the resolution that night, but we're coming out of work study understanding what it is that we're wanting to do, and then we make those changes in the council meeting, just like we amend any other resolution.
But I'm saying you're assuming council comes to some agreement in work study without a vote.
My assumption is that. And it'll provide Kendra time to come back with, though it may not be something that is in practice, is something we can do now that she understands our complexities.
Councilmember, I'm happy to do that research. And I will just add for consideration, there is a required 60-day review period by the Washington State Department of Commerce as well. And we are under the umbrella of the Growth Management Act. So there may be other compliance requirements with state agencies that Mike or others can speak to as well.
And that could be information that could be shared at the work study, correct?
If Mayor would like to direct staff for other work to present, yes, but the 60-day review period, that is
But that's just.
clear from
That's just
Department of Commerce for anything related to the comprehensive plan update.
I'm going to add, it would have been nice to have known some of these concerns earlier today. There's so much effort that our staff has put into this, and I don't want to take risks that will affect possible projects going forward. We have a game plan here, and this group of fine individuals, they're on it. So want everybody to be very careful before you think about your vote tonight. All the more, I am open to the idea of having a work study before the next council meeting, however, so. But it does provide a lot more work for our staff, especially before the holidays come in, just so you all know.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Just
On council, we had these conversations even last year when you were on council. So
Oh.
these concerns have been around.
Got it. I'm hearing you.
So I'm not sure where we're at in the process right now.
Well, we can go straight to vote.
Or do we amend the motion?
I'll call the question.
Yeah.
Does that require a second?
No, a single council member can call the question, and now the chair will call for the vote.
Okay. Call for the vote. Okay, the motion before us is to approve AB 24-117, a resolution authorizing adoption of the land use element for the 2024 North Bend Comprehensive Plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
It's 3 opposed. 2
Two opposed, three opposed. 3 opposed, 2.
3 opposed. 2 in favor, 3 opposed. 6. So it did fail. Okay. All right, item 13, AB 24-118, resolution authorizing adoption of housing element update for 2024 comprehensive plan. Ms. Burrell, will you please provide this report for us?
Okay, before you tonight is the housing element update for the 2024 comprehensive plan. As we discussed at the most recent work study on October 22nd, 2024, this update really started in early 2022 with the efforts around the housing needs assessment and the housing action plan. A community survey was sent out and 435 people responded, and we numerous open houses and workshops occurred, as well as 2 other council work studies earlier in 2024. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made the recommendation last month to council for approval. The city was tasked by the state legislature to identify sufficient land capacity to accommodate all projected housing needs during the next 20 years. The city showed a deficit of 611 units in the very low and extremely low income households. We needed to show that we could accommodate housing in all income brackets and provide for permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, emergency housing, and emergency shelters, and provide goals and policies in the elements focused on this. Our work was to plan for and accommodate the units. The city is not required to ensure this development occurs, just that the barriers are reduced so we can enable the housing. A land capacity analysis was provided to the city showing that the zoning changes made would allow for increased units to meet the needs for the different incomes. And the land use and housing element worked together to achieve this goal. Staff has worked with the state and county agencies to ensure these updates are consistent with the Growth Management Act, with HB 120 and 1337, the countywide planning policies, and worked with the Affordable Housing Committee, the Puget Sound Regional Council, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Snoqualmie Tribe. And we utilized consultants, and this was a ton of work. So we want to thank all of those who contributed to this milestone. Thank you.
Ms. Burrell, any council questions, clarifying questions for Ms. Burrell? Brendan?
In light of the decision that was just made a moment ago, how does that impact this?
Well, I don't know that one can go, well, so they are independent. We've carried these forward independently, but they're very closely interrelated. So if one thing, I would say most of the discussion just had, probably the effects are more in the housing element than even the land use. So that's where we are. Ultimately, we need both to pass to then have a complete 2024 package.
Any other clarifying questions?
When this all started, you said 2022 is when the analysis
Yes.
on this started?
Early 2022, yes.
So like January, February, something like that.
Yes.
And then throughout the process, there were multiple public hearings, weren't there?
Yes,
How many public hearings do you think there might have been?
well, there was a public hearing for each element at Planning Commission. As far as council touch points and Planning Commission together, I know we had a January 2024 workshop on the land use and the housing. Like we said, we had 3 council work studies this year. We had the housing action plan, which was approved by City Council September 2023. We also had a joint Planning Commission and council meeting related to the housing needs assessment. I'm recalling, don't have that date off the top of my head. Those are the major ones.
Okay, and another question I have. The council members can attend all of those, can they not? They're invited to go to all of those?
Yes.
And the council members can have access to the calendar to know when those are happening and also receive emails to know those are happening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like everybody here on council has been notified, but they haven't gone to the meetings when they could have for the last 2 years, gone to the meetings and add input. And here we're in the 11th hour. And then input, I think, is very intensive with the state. It sounds like you have to do a SEPA report. You have to go to the Commerce. These things take time. And since you started in 2022 to do all this, it seems very juvenile to, in the last minute, be insulting to our staff who've been working for 2 years on this, and the council members that are complaining about it did not even go to any of those meetings when they had access to do that. And I think that's offensive to our staff. And it's ridiculous that right now you're making a stand on this when you had every opportunity to be involved in the process.
Thank you. Anybody else, Brendan?
I appreciate your concerns, especially given your relationship with some of these decisions here. Some of these, the 2002 and those type of things were information gathering. We were presented with official recommendations this year, not in 2002. We've had work studies, we've had community economic development meetings. There's been all sorts of discussions with the previous council and staff, and then concerns have been expressed. So it's not like this is just, oh, we're surprised. There has been time, there has been involvement, there has been engagement, and there has been moments to express concern. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Anybody else? Okay, Christina.
So I think the discussion we had as a council here, we are all in favor of, finding opportunities for affordability. So it's not the what, it's the how that was the conversation on the last vote. So my question is, this is about the affordable housing and the different elements. So can we, because I think consensus of the council is in favor of the affordable housing and housing, can we vote on this one independent of the other one? I understand they're tied together. One is the what and the other is the how. Am I missing that?
I would say no, because both rely on the same land capacity analysis, and there's very specific numbers in there about how we're achieving our growth targets based on the zoning. So it's very much tied together.
May I ask one more question? And then I would ask once again for us to revisit the conversation about having a work study to be able to come to consensus on this. I really do think we can. I don't think any of us want to see this not go through. And I would like to have additional conversation on it.
I'm sorry. Are we just in clarifying questions? Okay, I have a clarifying question. To our council, legal counsel, actually. Though the last measure didn't pass, if we move to move this to the November 19th meeting, assuming we can get a work study then. How does it work to bring the previous resolution that was just voted down back on the agenda for the 19th? Does that require a member of the opposition voting to change their vote to request that that particular resolution go to the next meeting?
Sorry, Councilmember, I'm just thinking through the best procedure. If you're going to change your vote, it should be on the same night as the vote has been taken. It should not be at a later time. So and it is not proper for the city to bring forward a piece of legislation that has failed a vote without change. So I anticipate that the council will see a new or a revised resolution in some way. I will offer, this is sort of the no surprise rule. I think talking through these scenarios would be helpful in advance. But on the spot, I will say that generally parliamentary procedure requires a change of the votes on the night the vote is taken.
So for example, in this particular moment, well, if a change of vote were to happen now, would that resolution become on the agenda now, or does it become on the future agenda? The one that was just turned down? I thought there was a little bit of time that was allowed for an opposing vote to change their point of view to bring an item back onto an agenda.
Can I question to clarify a little more? I thought it was that if you were that you could bring it back up if you were a negative in the future, if it could be brought up, but is that not correct?
So I'll first answer the question that was pending by Councilmember Elwood, which is you may request to change your vote, in which case the chair will ask if there's any objection to the member changing their vote. If there is no objection, then the change in the vote may be had. If a single person objects, no change is possible and the member's original vote stands. As to changing a negative vote to a positive vote, I'm going to research that for a moment before I give you an answer.
Would a recess be in order?
I defer to the chair.
We can recess for about 10 minutes. Recording, everybody. Back. Oh, welcome back, everybody. Okay, I think we left it where you were going to have an answer for us in some item.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you, Council, for indulging me in a break. The question from Councilmember Elwood triggers a renewal motion, which we don't often see. So thank you again for the opportunity to research it. This motion has been framed as a motion to reconsider, which is when the group has been asked to consider a motion that has already been defeated at the same meeting. Therefore, there needs to be a motion by the member to reconsider the motion, renew the motion, if you will. And the motion must be made by a person who voted on the prevailing side earlier on the question. So this resolution failed by the motion made. So a member voting no would be making the renewal motion here. In addition, there needs to be a majority of the members present to approve of this renewal motion. So once the motion is made to renew this matter, it would need to be approved by a majority of the members present this evening.
Carol.
And to be clear, that can only happen tonight, and this item cannot be renewed at a future meeting unless changed. Effectively then it's a new item.
That is consistent with parliamentary procedure and the city's practices, and that's my understanding.
Okay. So to be clear to council that we can have a work study, discuss all the options, come to some conclusion that there isn't a better option, and we will not be allowed to bring this back to council.
And Councilmember Tremolata, I will just offer this nuance, if you will. I'm sorry. That's parliamentary procedure and practices. The law does not prevent you from suspending, for example, council rules or parliamentary procedure to reconsider a resolution. But we do follow our council rules through resolution, and we do follow parliamentary procedure. So my answer is that, but you may also consider other solutions.
So point of information, let me take a bite at this apple. If there is a motion to renew made by a member who voted against the original motion, that renewal motion simply puts that measure AB, whatever it was, back on the table before us this evening for consideration.
If the motion is approved by a majority of the members present to consider a renewal
The
of the
renewal.
motion.
So now we're back where we were.
That is correct.
And unless anyone changes the vote, then when we revote, we're going to end up in the same place, unless there is a subsequent motion, for example, to postpone to a date certain to consider this agenda bill on November 17th.
That is a perfectly acceptable parliamentary procedural motion.
How do we make that happen? Moving, how do we bring it back? And
I voted in favor.
to move, to move this item and resurrect the last item for the November 19th meeting. What's the process for that?
So a renewal motion would be a council member asking to reconsider the motion related to A, B, 24117, I believe it's the agenda bill and resolution we are considering. It's a motion to renew or reconsider the vote. That motion will need to be supported by a majority of the council members present. At that time, there is to be a motion to approve, amend, or table AB 24117. I've heard different options this evening. And then we will continue down that path of whatever motion is taken on that motion, on the legislation.
And since we're working on AB 24118, I can't recall if we've already brought this motion for, okay, so we don't need to satisfy AB 118. So the order could be, myself could do the motion to reconsider, then we would bring back 117 and then amend the motion approving it tonight and moving it to the November 19th. And then we go to 118 and we move to push that to the November 19th as well.
Those are perfectly acceptable parliamentary procedural options.
Okay, so then we're in compliance with our protocol in doing that. Okay.
So with that being said.
So with that being said.
Can I ask a question? Does that give us enough time as a council to be, I mean, is there any sort of like time frame? We have to have a public hearing or something like that prior to the December 3rd? Like, is there a conflict of time there?
Very good question. And the answer is no. So you would need to have a meeting after December 3rd to be able to notify, to get it to the paper, notify those property owners and provide the minimum 10 days for comment period ahead of that hearing. If there's specific changes that you're looking for that need notification to those property owners. You do not have enough time before December 3rd.
You can add one in December. Is that we've planned it to the second half of December to be gone, right? And we've been doing this all year, that the second half of December. So I know I won't be here. And so I don't know if other council members are not going to be here. So you're running into, again, to another time conflict that we might not be able to vote for it.
I'm so tired the way this council does the calendar. We're gonna have a work study next week if you want a work study, but no, with all due respect, somebody can't be here, so we kicked it to the 19th. So we're not gonna kick it in December. This is the exact problem with council and how we have operated. You want to punt it down the field. You are on record, you voted no. The consequences will come in January because you voted no.
Okay. So I move to reconsider AB 24-117. That's it, right?
And the chair can call for a vote of the members present to reconsider AB 24-117.
I would like to call that vote, sure. Okay, vote to reconsider. Was that? On air. AB 24-117, resolution authorizing adoption of land use element update for 2024 comprehensive plan. I have a second.
I'll second.
We need a second.
Yeah, we need a second.
She just second.
Chris did? Okay, second. Okay, motion made by Mr. Brennan Elwood and seconded by Christine Rustic.
And Mayor, just to clarify for the record, Councilmember Jocelyn had requested whether this was a debatable motion. A motion to reconsider is a debatable motion should the council wish to debate before voting.
Any comments that you'd like to make at this point?
Well, my understanding is we voted this down. And precedent suggests it can't come before us again for reconsideration, which would be a really bad thing because we all know why. So I'll certainly be voting in favor of reconsideration such that we can in fact adopt a land use element to our comprehensive plan before the end of the year. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else?
But council member, that is not possible, just to point clarified based on what Mike McCarty has said and others, unless it, as written, it gets adopted.
Anybody else? Okay, we ready to take a vote on this? Okay. Get the wording right for this one. What's my wording again?
It's a motion to reconsider.
Yep.
The council vote as to AB 24-117.
Okay. Okay, motion is to reconsider council vote for AB 24-117, resolution authorizing, pardon me. We're flipping the page. There we go. Sorry, guys. AB 24-117, resolution authorizing adoption of land use element update for 2024 comprehensive plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. It's at 5-1.
Point of information, is that motion now back before this body for consideration?
Technically, the chair needs to call for a motion related to AB 24-117. It's basically back live, but
Well, then I'm gonna, if I may have your honor, I'd like to move that we postpone to the next regularly scheduled North Bend City Council meeting on November 19th, that we postpone AB 24-117 to a date certain on November 19th, 2024.
Do we clarification, do we need to put that as a work study? So starting an earlier one, is that?
Nothing about a work study. I am simply, making a motion that this agenda bill gets postponed until the next regular meeting. That's the motion.
But I guess the question is, what can we do? I mean, if you just send it to a council meeting, are we going to build it at the council meeting?
I could call for the question again and we could re-vote on whether or not to simply approve it this evening. That's an option.
Point of information. We can revisit this motion because I don't think it's been seconded yet, right?
Not
So is it procedurally appropriate for me to ask for a point of information before we have a second? Let me just start there.
usually we have a motion and then a second. If you need clarification on the pending motion, though, feel free to ask.
Okay. Second, now I have a point of information. The work study in and of itself can either be rolled into an amendment to the motion, correct? Or we work on the work study separately, like we normally do through pro tem and the mayor, and it doesn't have anything to do with this motion. Right, because I think our practice is we have work studies, we decide work studies regardless of the motion that's on the agenda. So we can vote on, we can vote on the agenda and then we'll coordinate a work study independent of this. That's one option. One path is rolling that amendment into this motion, which I don't know if we need to.
Could we then just go ahead and place it, add a friendly amendment to it to create a work study at 6 o'clock on the 19th prior to the 19th?
That's useless. If there's a change, we'll go back on the docket.
But I believe that it's the prerogative of the mayor pro tem to call a work study whenever the mayor pro tem wants to call a work study. And the two are entirely unrelated. Nothing in this motion precludes there from being a work study. We just don't need to have a formal motion that says we're going to hold one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm trying to.
Thank you for clarifying that.
The next step is for the chair to call for a second as to the motion to postpone to the next regular North Bend City Council meeting.
Excuse me. So right now we are, is this, do I have to name it as an item? It's still an item number 12, correct? So we're going back to that. So motion is to postpone AB 24-117 to update going forward. I think it was 19th of November, next city council meeting. This is with regard to the resolution authorizing adoption of land use element update for 2024 comprehensive plan. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I abstain.
One abstention, one nay, and I guess that's 4 yay.
My abstention is the same reason as before.
Oh, got it. So motion passes. Okay. All right, so we're now at item 813 again.
Your Honor,
Yeah, hold on.
I'd move that agenda bill 24-118 be postponed until the next regular scheduled meeting of the North Bend City Council on November 19th, 2024.
I second.
Okay. And you can speak to that if you want. Or not. No one needs to speak anymore. Okay, very good. So with that, we're going to take item number 13, AB 24-118, and we're going to move that to.
I believe you need to call for the vote, Your Honor.
Oh, gosh, pardon me. Yep. Pardon me. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yay.
Okay. Or favored and 2 nay, so it does pass. Okay. All right. Well, that was fun.
Civics 101 or 2.
That's for sure.
Maybe this is more of a graduate study.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. I didn't even ask what the people want to talk about this. If any members of the audience would like to comment on any agenda item, we would invite you to come forward to the podium at this time. Is there anyone on?
Which agenda item, Your Honor?
This would be 113.
Thank you.
Yeah, pardon me. If you have requested accommodation with the city clerk.
Oh,
Wait,
Yep.
sorry.
no, we just moved that. We just postponed that.
Excuse me. 14. Excuse me. Item 14, AB 24-119, ordinance declaring emergency and adopting moratorium on new towing and impound uses in EP1 zone. And Mr. Riccardi, will you please provide that staff report for us?
Will do.
And thank you.
So as the council is aware, we are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan and development regulations for the 2024 periodic update. So as a part of that process, we're required to meet the residential growth targets, and we've provided amendments to our land use designations and zoning to accommodate those growth targets. And as a part of that, we've proposed rezone of approximately 51 parcels in what's currently the Employment Park 1 zone to be into a new neighborhood mixed use zone, which allows the second story residential development to enable us to help meet our residential growth targets. So towing and impound is a use that's currently allowed within the Employment Park 1 zone, and it's not proposed as an allowed use within the neighborhood mixed use zone. So that is largely considered an incompatible use with residential. So there's potential impacts from a towing use to adjacent residential properties. That could include things like 24-hour operation, noise, visual impacts, lighting impacts. So not considered a compatible use. The city also has concerns about potential water quality impacts from a new towing and impound operation. So most of the city, including the Employment Park 1 zone and the proposed neighborhood mixed use zone, sits atop the city's aquifer, which is the source of the city's domestic water supply. Towing and impound uses involve the delivery and storage of vehicles that may be damaged in accidents, which could therefore leak gasoline, oil, other fluids into groundwater. And without proper stormwater or groundwater controls in place, such a towing and impound use might pose a threat to water quality, including to the city's domestic water source. So therefore, to avoid the establishment of incompatible uses shortly before the adoption of the 24 comp plan and zoning amendments, and to allow the city time to examine the potential water quality impacts from towing and impound uses and establish appropriate regulations addressing those concerns, an emergency moratorium is proposed to take immediate effect to prohibit the establishment, location, operation, and licensing of new towing and impound uses within the Employment Park 1 zone. Staff recommend approval of this ordinance, and as a required component of an emergency moratorium, a public hearing needs to be scheduled within 60 days to hear testimony on this action. So because of our calendar, by the end of the year, that hearing is proposed to be scheduled for the December 3rd City Council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Riccardi. Any clarifying questions for Mr. Riccardi? No? Okay, Councilmember Jocelyn, would you please make the motion?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move approval of Agenda Bill 24-119, an ordinance declaring an emergency and adopting a moratorium on new towing and impound uses within the Employment Park 1 zone as a first and final reading.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Motion made by Mr. Jocelyn, second by Ms. Rustick. Mr. Jocelyn, would you like to speak to your motion?
I believe that Mr. McCarty spoke to it well. It serves the city's interest to, I believe, approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rustick, do you have any?
I have nothing further to add. I agree with.
Thank you very much. Any council members have? Susan.
Well, I think it's important to protect our water table. So yeah, I think I'm going to vote for this.
Anybody else? Okay. Motion before us is to approve AB 24-119, an ordinance declaring an emergency and adopting a moratorium on new towing and impound uses within Employment Park 1 zone as a first and final reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote. Thank you, everybody. Is passes unanimously. Okay, we will now recess for a meeting and an executive session to discuss performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G. The executive session is expected to last 15 minutes. There is action anticipated after executive session, so the video taping will pause at this time. It will resume when we return to chambers. You're not back. Okay. Okay, we're back from executive session. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have a motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a separation agreement with David Miller, providing for a full release of all claims and separation payment in the amount of $41,429.73 in the form and content acceptable to the city attorney.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Gottelf and seconded by Mr. Brendan Elwood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have passed that unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to mayor, council, and administrative concerns and initiatives. Let's see. Let's start with Errol right next to me. Do you have anything to speak up?
Today's a big day across the country, across Washington. Be kind to your neighbors. Diversity of opinion is the best part about this country, however tomorrow ends up. And I hope everyone exercised their right to vote.
Thank you. Susan, you have anything to say?
I have nothing.
Okay, Brendan?
I'll echo Councilmember Tremolata's point of view there. And appreciate everybody's long hours and dedication that you're putting into all the decisions that we're having to make. And I appreciate patience through some of these tougher decisions. And at the end of the day, I appreciate and respect each one of you. And we're on to the next decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Alan.
Yeah, echo Mr. Tremolato's statement and also appreciate all the hard work. I know this didn't go the way some people wanted. Unfortunately, sometimes when you do this and we're making the sausage when we're here, it's not ready. I'm hoping we can move on and get to a resolution that is acceptable for all. My vote is always look for how do we get to a yes as opposed to how we get to a no.
Thank you, Christina.
Yes, I'll agree with that. Certainly, our jobs are to take a look at both sides of any of these situations and weigh the pros and cons. There's never going to be a perfect scenario, but that is the work that we have agreed to do, and we must take it seriously, and we do. The other thing I wanted to mention is there have already been a few power outages in the city. For any residents who are new to the area, it gets very windy here, so make sure your flashlights have batteries. And if you, a good investment in a backup generator. I know Puget Sound Energy has been working diligently this year to improve some of our situations, but it's better to be prepared. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I will simply echo the comments of my fellow council members this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Join me for my Meet Up with the Mayor series, which starts tomorrow, where residents are invited to stop by, chat, and ask city-related questions that are important to you and connect. I will be at Huckstutter on Wednesday, November 6th from 9 to 10. Chat with the Chiefs is an opportunity to talk about public safety in North Bend. Stop by Heartwood Cafe on Wednesday, November 13th from 9 to 10. And meet Snoqualmie North Bend Police Chief Brian Lynch and Eastside Fire and Rescue Chief Ben Lane. Help prevent localized flooding by clearing neighborhood storm drains and culverts. Fallen leaves pile up on storm drains on our streets, blocking rainwater from draining, which can lead to a neighborhood flooding. Please call Public Works after hours emergency number to report any major flooding or storm drain issues. City offices will be closed Monday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day. Council, remember we have a council work study that's going to be canceled for November 26th. And with that, I'm going to offer a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Second by Mr. Tremolata. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.